Thanks. Welcome back to Senate Education on the 15th of February. Ms. St. James, do we have you past 3:30?
Yes.
You're okay. All right, great. So we are looking at S-139, and I believe we have we do indeed, a new draft on our page, dated today, 2.1. And then there are the decision points related to it. How do you want to handle this, Ms. St. James? Do you want to just go through the questions that you have? I know I have a marked up copy now as well with some questions, and if you're comfortable facilitating it, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. The draft that you have that I think Daphne posted is still the same draft that we looked at last time. It's draft 2.1.
Great.
And so I've, based on the committee's conversation, the last time you met to discuss this bill, I just put them all of the questions that came up in areas where perhaps I had a question, I put them into the decision points document. And the first decision point is just dates. There's been a lot of discussion about how quickly the petition period should run. I
think, and I don't want to speak for everyone, I think we thought we would just get rid of the date, in other words, kind of keep this as an ongoing group that would, if somebody has a concern in 10 years, this would be the way to go. Reach out to the state board. And as we go through this, I think maybe, so I think that's what we had talked about doing, so that everybody has an opportunity. We won't shut anybody down, shut anybody off. But as I was rereading all of this, I just want to make certain we're still in this process. The state board is saying, hey, we've done some research. So let me back up so that we're all on the same page. Someone were to see a mascot that they raised questions in their mind, they would file something with the State Board of Education. The State Board of Education would look into it. It's on them to kind of do a little bit of history. It's on them to sort of say, okay, yes, we agree with your concerns. We are going to reach out to the school board. It is now on the school board, so it's not on the state board, because I do want to make sure that we're putting it back on the school board. The school board then says, okay, the state board is saying, listen, folks, you need to come up with a new proposal. And it's the school board that makes the new proposal and brings it to the state board. Accurate? Okay. And then we don't have any sticks. We're talking about putting some carrots in there. In other words, people want to take it upon themselves now to do their own assessment. People want to start working on it. That's where we're going to look for the Agency of Education to say, all right, you're doing this work on your own. You've recognized that this is a problem. And therefore, the Agency of Education would have some authority to allocate some funds that would help with rebranding. And that would be soup to nuts, however they wanted to use it, uniforms, gym floor, stadium, all that kind of thing.
Yes, so that's decision point number 2.
Okay, great.
So as drafted, so the state board proposal, and I know there was discussion about this last time, and I apologize if I misunderstood my assignment, but I didn't feel comfortable making the changes to this draft absent this decision point conversation.
Sure.
But yes, so the way this is drafted is the statute, the forever law, is saying if you want to change your mascot at any time, the school board makes a proposal to the State Board of Education, who does that review and then makes the ultimate decision. There's no contemplation of transition funds for uniforms, billboard, basketball court. There's in perpetuity going forward. what the state board proposed was just that limited time period of allowing anyone to petition for review. So we can certainly add the petition for review to statute so that anyone could ask for a review of school branding at any time going forward, 2037. What I've suggested for decision points is, are there any limitations on who can petition? Is there any limitation on how often someone can petition to have a mascot reviewed? The State Board of Education is, a group of appointed people. So if someone petitions and their petition gets shot down, and then there's a vacancy and they think they have someone who might be more sympathetic to their position, could they petition then again in another 6 months to have the state board do that review all over again? Just some food for thought for, as drafted, it's a very limited amount of time. And so those guardrails are built in. If it's going to be allowing anyone to petition for review of school branding at any point in the future, it's a policy choice on whether or not you want to put any guardrails on that.
I mean, really what you're trying to do here, your questions, and I think that they're really good ones and I appreciate them. You're saying, what if you get a frequent flyer, basically somebody that's just going to keep submitting over and over and over again? We get that kind of person. Well, I personally don't know if we could have a review period during the year that the state board looks at it, but then I worry that I don't want some kid living with, going to school with a mascot that is making them uncomfortable until it gets to the review period. That doesn't make sense to me. If we get a frequent flyer, we get a frequent flyer, I think, and we just hope that people be respectful and thoughtful. But that's my thought. I'm looking to the committee to see where everybody. I mean, we get frequent flyers all the time. I mean, in life, somebody might even put in the same bill, year after year after year, and sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's not. But we don't. Some legislatures, I do know, I believe they do put in limits in terms of, like, you can only put in 10 bills, you can only put in 5 bills. Philosophically, the state hasn't done that, so I don't see us doing it as a policy committee. But again, I'm looking to colleagues to see if anybody would want to put those limits in. Center lines.
I'm sort of ambivalent about that. I think we should give it the trial run.
Yeah, that's a good way to
See
think
what
about it.
happens. And maybe there's a review period, come back to it. If somebody's been the frequent flyer for the first 3 years, then wait a minute, or allowing for the board to make decisions about turning away or accepting is also, I don't think we're going to be able to manage everything.
Yeah. One thing to think about might be, Ms. St. James, just in the back of your mind is, what if we're asking also for a report in 3 years, from the state board? It doesn't have to be complicated, but they come back in 3 years and they say, hey, this is going really well, or these are the changes that we would like to have. They may even say, I don't anticipate it, but they may even say, okay, I think we're good. Like, take it off the books. We don't, it can be, we're not going to be in this position because we've had a number of, we're confident that what's out there at this point is not offensive. I'm just looking around. Okay. So people are generally comfortable with keeping that flexible in terms of, if somebody wants to just keep making proposals. And also the idea of a 3-year, let's have the legislature get a report from the state board in 3 years. as to generally how it's going. And of course, whoever is in this committee going forward will also, I'm sure, check in. But this kind of formalizes it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Great, I made that note. We're going to add a reporting requirement, and we're going to take out of session law the petition concept and bump that up into section 2, which is the statute. So the next decision point I just wanted to flag was making sure that the committee is comfortable with the language on lines. Basically, lines 7 through 15. The language, the guidelines for what acceptable school branding is.
So thanks for raising it. I talked to a few colleagues about this over the past few days, and also the state board. I do worry a little bit that the part that says any person, and I believe it was somebody on this committee raised, any person, group, or persons or organizations associated with repression of others, might be too broad. But as a couple of folks said, this is the State Board of Education. These are general guidelines. We're going to trust them to come up with a, the right decision. I had come up with a little language, if I can just pull it up. In talking with folks, do we say, individuals, organizations, slogans, or symbols that are commonly associated with white supremacy? I mean, that's very narrow. I don't know if I'm absolutely fine keeping it as is. I think, we are looking to make sure that it's not associated with the repression of others. And yes, you could get some, it's keeping it broad. But I think, again, we're leaving it to the state board to make these decisions. And again, I guess I keep saying again, we'll be checking in. We'll see how this is going.
Okay, we're going to leave that one as is.
Yep, as is.
And then fourth, page 2, line 18, and page 4, line 3, although page 4, line 3 is talking about the session law concept of the petition period. We're going to move that back up into statute. But there was discussion about not requiring the school board to present a second and a third choice.
Right. I think we're leaning toward the one, put forward an option. And then if all of a sudden somebody says, this option, calling it this isn't appropriate either, then we'll send them back.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to flesh out, was if there's no second or third choice, what happens if the state board rejects their only choice? It would go back to the school board.
Go back to the school board.
Okay. And then section 2, page 3, lines 3 through 8 is the exception for Native American tribes to use either their own names or likeness for a tribal school or give explicit permission. There, you heard testimony suggesting that carve out be expanded to include federally recognized tribes. Would you like to add that?
Makes sense.
Okay.
So the question I have on that one is, we heard that the use of giving permission for the use of a tribal name or relationship to a name might offend somebody else, another group.
Right. Are we giving are we creating something?
It says that it says section will not prohibit the tribe from giving explicit consent for a public school to use school branding related to their tribe. And so I think we heard from one person, I think it was Judy Dow, who said that one tribe may be fine with that one tribe, but it might offend someone in a similar tribe. So is that an issue? or not. So just,
Is that a question for me?
it's a question. Yeah. If you can solve that problem, that'd be great.
Well, what I could do, I'm sorry, Senator Campion, I'm
No,
still
no, of
learning my
course.
boundaries here and trying to
Oh, no,
figure out when,
there are no, yeah, no.
when I can
please
talk.
go.
Thank you for your patience. So one thing I could do is read the Massachusetts language to you.
Okay.
I believe she, and I linked to it on that document that I prepared with all of the other states that either have passed legislation or are considering legislation. Because I believe she referenced the Massachusetts language.
He did.
And that reads, section shall not prohibit a Native American tribe as identified by the Commission on Indian Affairs located within the boundaries of the Commonwealth from choosing to use a Native American related name or logo for a sports team comprised of its tribal members, including a tribal school or intramural league, or from that tribal nation giving explicit consent for a school to use their particular tribal name.
Oh,
It seemed to me that when Chief Stevens was talking about this, he talked about some kind of connection between the tribe and the school, whether it was a tribal school, which I don't know that we have any of in the state, or, a connection to the location or something. But he talked about a connection between the tribe and the school.
Both
So I
the
don't know if that makes a difference.
Both the
Yeah.
Massachusetts language and the language in the draft before you requires the tribe's consent. So I think there would probably be, I think you can argue it either way. You're placing the burden on the Native American tribe to say yes or no. But you are giving them the power as well. I think it's a policy choice there on where that burden lies.
So how would we, what does explicit consent, how do you define that? So if a tribe were to say, we want, the local school to be able to use this, I mean, who makes that decision? It's got to be more than just like, let's take Chief, was it Stevens? How does that work? And is it different for every tribe? In other words, will you have one tribe that maybe the governance is for the chief to make that decision, and then for another tribe, it's a vote of the tribe? Do you have anything on that?
I don't. I can tell you just from the survey that I've done of the other states, I think this is a common carve out on the Western states, where there are a lot of, where there are still reservations with schools or communities that abut reservations that may have community connections to the local tribe. And I think that it appears that the various states wanted to honor those communities. We are very different than, I can say, I worked in Oregon. We're very different from Oregon. We don't have any Native American reservations in Vermont. So it's a completely different landscape as far as kind of what's in play at the time you're creating this law. So I think you raise a great point. Every tribal organization is going to have a different governance structure, and you're right. Who is giving that consent? How is it documented?
Right. And we just discussed whether or not to allow tribes outside of Vermont, but throughout the United States to do it, which now I'm thinking sounds insane. In other words, I think if we're going to do it, we keep it in Vermont, not open it up. And this would be if a tribe were to recognize want an elementary school, or an elementary school in a way wants to recognize a particular tribe, a particular heritage associated with where that school is located, and there's consent from the tribe, then I think that we would allow that and let consent be determined by the tribe itself. Committee, does that sound okay? Yeah, Senator Chinden.
You just said we would allow that, but what we're really doing is we're giving this this authority and this decision-making power to the Board of Education, right? This bill putting it
Which
forth.
decision?
Well, whether or not it would be allowed would be up to the Board of Education and their good judgment based on the information presented to them, right? So we're setting
Yes.
the parameters
Yes.
for the Board
Yes.
of Education.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Great.
Senator Hooker.
I'm just kind of wondering where this, puts the school, and do we recommend that the school that is asking for a particular mascot communicate with the tribes? I mean, is there a way of saying there has to be some kind of connection between the school and the tribe that's being referenced?
Something to think about. Yeah. You mean whether it's the property it's on or its location,
It's history,
its
whatever.
history. I think
around.
my gut is we stay out of that because, if a school is really interested in honoring, if they see it as an honor, and the tribe also agrees that it's an honor and it's in the state of Vermont, maybe it could be, the connection could be so, distant. It could be that a Native American from that tribe attended that school, which I guess would also would qualify as part of the history as to why they're choosing to be in that direction. But I'm inclined to keep this sort of as is, but happy to keep considering it. Okay, continue, please.
Decision point 6, section 3, which I think is in a little bit of a different context now. So section 3, remember, was that limited period of time session law where people could petition to have the mascot reviewed by the State Board of Education. And there was discussion last time about a public notification mechanism. If we're not going to limit the amount of time someone has to petition, if it's now in perpetuity, you can petition to have school branding reviewed. Do you want some sort of public notification mechanism that this law has gone into effect?
Have we done it with can you think of anything else where we have done something similar?
So I can tell you, I've reached out to a couple colleagues. I didn't query the whole office,
Sure.
but there is don't want to misstate the bill. There's a requirement in H581 for the Commissioner of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, in consultation with the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, to provide extensive outreach to purchasers of forest products. And that's related to annual permit issues. So it's very
my gut
broad.
That thing is not going to get a Digger article. You know what I mean? This has already been in the press. I'm inclined to say, again, since we're giving, in perpetuity, I think we're okay without notifying. I think the public is watching. I think the public has its eyes on this, and once it's out, and I think it will continue to do. I think the Social Equity Caucus is getting involved a little bit more. We're hearing from the governor's office this week on this. So I don't think we need to, and I'm just looking for objections to that. Okay.
So decision point 7 is a moot point now.
Right, okay.
And decision point 8, section 3, transition funding. Just the general flagging the general concept and the amount, if it is something that you're interested in.
So would you direct me to where that is on the bill?
Yes, so it is on section 3, page 4, line
Yep.
14.
So I like it, but I don't like it, in other words, forever. In other words, if a school were to take this next year and do it, okay? So if all of a sudden you have school in such and such a town, there might be a debate going on now, there might be whatever it could be. I think we say, in 10 years, if you're finally getting your act together and you have 17 proposals, we're not going to give you money. We're talking about within, I think, a 12-month period. I could even say, 18 months after passage, something. I don't know what others are thinking on that. It just seems to me we want people to go and let's say you're debating this and, getting you to yes faster could be done because you're going to end up getting funds for the transition of your mascot, from transition away from your current mascot to something else. Seems okay. Okay. So I think generally people are, so let's say 18 months out, also given that also recognizes that we're in a pandemic, gives more than a year and a half. And in terms of actual dollar amounts, I know Senator Terenzini's done research on this. I know South Burlington, there's going to be a range. But let's say, just for argument's sake, the state would pay, let's say you've got six schools in the state, 6 districts, roughly, for argument's sake. And each one of those for this transition would cost their local folks a couple $100,000. What if the state were to chip in 20% of that? Something, a percentage, I think is maybe the way to go. But then again, then you get into people that say, all right, now we're going to do the high end rework of everything. Is there a way to leave that to the discretion of AOE to negotiate something? But then what if they say, hey, here's $1,000, which sounds like it's the equivalent of a few footballs. You know what I mean? It's just not real money. Let's keep thinking about that. Go ahead, Ms. St. James.
I'm sorry. The way this is written and was proposed by the State Board of Education is that the transition funding amount would defray the costs. It would not totally cover them.
No, I understand. Yeah.
Okay. And it would need to be included in a proposal to the state board, and then the state board would sign off on the final amount. So
it is kind of negotiated.
it is in the determining the amount, but the appropriation that the legislature needs to make, that dollar number, I think there needs to be a dollar number there.
Let's put in $300,000. Yeah, Senator Chittenden, you're.
Do we
Go
ever allocate an amount that then we would then empower the board to divvy that up based on how many actually come forward and request the money? So is that a common practice where if we budget 300,000 or 500,000, then if only one person comes forward, the Board of Education can use it all to cover those expenses? Or if 5 people come forward, they could, based on the number of people that come forward, divvy it up as they see fit.
As I understand it, that's kind of what we're doing. Is that accurate, Ms. St. James? We would put that dollar amount and then let the back and forth kind of begin.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be if no one comes forward until 17 months and 29 days and there's
Yeah.
$300,000 left,
They could
they
really
could,
help
and
that school district.
yeah. Do you want to keep the transition funding tied to only school districts that come forward on their own, or are you do you want it open to anyone who changes in that 18-month period, regardless of whether it was on their own initiative or through a petition?
So that's a good question. So for example, I mean, we're talking about the school board. What's interesting to me is there's some time there. For example, back to sort of on the ground, if I were to express a concern about a mascot right away, and the school board and the state board has 2 weeks, will likely have 2 weeks to get back to me. That also gives the state board or the local board an opportunity to sort of get that ball rolling. Does that make sense?
Are you
And they
asking
could
me?
still benefit. I would hate to see somebody just say, hey, they're not going to qualify because Brian Campion already made a complaint.
Right.
I would want them I want something where the school board could also respond, during a period of time. And I guess I'll just leave it there with you. If you could work on that kind of language to make sure that's crystal clear, that just because somebody jumps in, it doesn't mean that the school board wasn't about to do the right thing. We still want them to be able to take advantage of those funds.
How about that the school board proposes alternative branding that is accepted by the State Board of Education? So it doesn't tie the approval of the transition funds to who is initiating the change.
It's to the
just
product.
Positive change. Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the last decision point I put on there that hasn't been a lot of discussion on but there have been a couple comments on, is just whether the committee is interested in extending this. Right now, this bill only applies to public schools.
Well, I think we want to capture everybody. And I think from what I've heard, I don't want this just to be, so whatever our language is around schools that receive public funding, they too need to have the assessment.
I will just point out
Please.
that I think it gets a little murkier on First
Great.
Amendment issues when we're looking at the independent schools. These mascot laws, if you will, are all new. And so there's not a lot of case law, if any, out there to look at whether there have been any successful challenges. It's very clear, the case law is very clear that the government can control government speech. So public schools are government. You can limit the speech there because you are the government. But when it comes to an independent school, even if they are receiving public funds, the public funds are potentially not totally supporting the whole independent school. And so I'm just flagging this.
No,
as
I
a
appreciate
potential
that. I
First Amendment
do.
issue.
I don't know where our academies and others are. But listen, this is, I, for one, and I'm looking around to see if there's objections. I think we say this for all schools.
Do you want me to look any further into that issue or just leave it?
Sure, it'd be
there?
great. I'd like you to also put it in, but yeah, it'd be great if you wouldn't mind. Or however you do it, look into it. I'm not saying just toss it in without a good legal review, but yeah, if you could look into it a little bit more. But I'm inclined to say, okay, and I just want to go back to this. All weekend I kept going back and forth. Are there other ways to do this? Just watching our committee discussions, et cetera, over the past couple of weeks on this, I think I still feel this is the way to go. I don't see another way to stop what I can see personally, speaking for myself, examples or contributions to systematic racism. I really don't. And I having talked to a teacher over the weekend, former teacher, walking into school, it's not the culture, it's not the climate we want to create. So Senator Chittenden.
I agree with you, Chair Campion. I just wonder, I don't want to overreach. And what I'm wondering if maybe a way to split this is I'm betting that independent approved schools that will participate in intermunicipal competition. That might be a way that if they want to be able to compete with public schools in any recognized athletic program, because in a way these are mascots to support athletics and school spirit, that might be a caveat. So if there's an independent school out there that just wants to do their thing and doesn't want to talk to government and have their students compete with anybody else, I gotta say I will support them choosing whatever they want for a mascot because it is a free country. But if they want to be approved and compete with other kids, they have to conform.
And I think that would do it because I think everybody competes with the public. So if you wouldn't mind taking a look at that language a little bit, and I'll ask around on that as well. May I ask a question on page 3, line 19?
I'm there.
Okay, so the state, just above that on 18, the state board shall notify the school board of a school subject to an objection within 15 days after receiving the objection. Then says the school board shall conduct a self-review of the school branding.
Yes.
So let's just go back to my feet on the ground here. So the state board says, so are we at the spot where the state board is saying, hey, listen, folks, is the state board directing the school boards to review their branding, or the state board saying, hey, that has to change, that branding?
It's saying that we got a complaint
Yep,
and now you have to come, we're going to do a review of this.
yep,
So we're
The
going to
state
give you an
board, yep.
opportunity to say, oh no, that complaint is meritless and we think we should stay with our
Got
current
it.
school branding and here's
Got it.
why, or oops,
Got it.
here we are, the
Yeah.
starfish.
yep. Okay, thanks for that clarification. Committee, any other questions at this point? Okay, Ms. St. James, do you have everything you need to go on to provide another draft?
I do. When would you like that?
I mean, I hate that question only because I don't want to put pressure too much. I know you've got a lot going on.
No, I need that.
Okay, I mean,
need you to
I'd
put
love,
pressure on me.
I'd love for us to look at this again for at least 15 minutes tomorrow.
Okay.
If we can, and if we can't squeeze it in tomorrow, just to go through it again. That's all I want to do is just go through the changes, et cetera. That would be great.
Okay,
But-
I can do that.
Okay. If you can't, please always feel free to say, Thursday would be better.
Will do.
In fact, why don't we do it Thursday? We have a packed day tomorrow. We've got the trustees we're electing. Let's do it Thursday for 15 minutes. And we're kind of keeping Friday open to kind of clean up a bunch of things. So doing it Thursday will be fine.
Okay.
I believe we also have you in tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, to talk about appropriations. So I'm wondering if perhaps you and I can find some time and Daphne can help set this up if she's there. Maybe we can find 30 minutes between now and tomorrow afternoon, even if it's in the morning, just for me to kind of give you an overview of, I think, the direction that we're heading in to talk to appropriations. So if Daphne, if you could find 30 minutes that works for Ms. St. James, that would be great. And I can, if need be, leave my morning committee tomorrow for 30 minutes.
Just as one point of clarification on the agenda right now, we have the appropriations scheduled for Thursday, not tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So yeah, sometime before Thursday then. That's fine. That's fine. Gives me more time to talk to Senator Kitchell. Okay. Anything else on this or any other item that we are working on? Mr. Demaray has a full day. He does have a new draft of S219, which I will ask Daphne if you have that, if you would send that to all senators, that would be great. And also post that. And he'll take us through the changes so we have an opportunity to review them in the next day or so. Daphne, did you happen to catch that?
Yes, I caught that and
Great.
I will share that.
Okay. Now there's a chairs meeting, but it's not for a little while. So any other questions? Yes, Senator Hooker.
Is the joint assembly on Wednesday or Thursday for the trustees? Isn't it Thursday?
I'm not sure. I'll look to
I think it's-
Daphne on that.
Yeah,
That's confirming that's for Thursday, Senator Hooker.
Okay.
Thursday at 10:30, I see.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was tomorrow. Okay. So I think be in touch with questions, concerns. Again, I'm hoping to for miscellaneous ed and either mascots or church and state to leave on Friday. And we're going to hear a lot of testimony from the agency this week on things related to what we would put in appropriations, as well as this study of teacher shortage and also the negotiation bill S-162, which we'll hear a little update on Friday, and then we'll really jump into it. We have this week, next week, and then 1 week after crossover to get everything done. And we'll also take a look at our letter to finance. So good stuff.